but they're motivated the same way we are. They want to make a difference,
Yeah.
and they're willing to work, but they need to be communicated with.
Yeah.
And you
Circling
can't
all the way back around to the whole point of this conversation.
really.
Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Well, I'd like to welcome our fans, both of you, to this podcast. And, just go ahead and acknowledge up front that nobody yelled out my last name in a high-pitched voice. Instead of Mike Marshall being across the Ethernet and internet from me, I have my good friend Matthew Brammer. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, Mark. How are you, man?
It has been way too long since you and I have been able to see each other's faces and talk. So this
That's
is
true.
super cool.
Yes.
And I'll explain to the audience. You and I go way back. We were on the Ford project together, and
Yes.
I and every other individual found you to be just a phenomenal human being, and just a lot of fun to get to see at conferences and get to learn from. But that's not why I have you on the podcast today.
Oh,
Okay.
darn.
Not just because you're a great guy. You have a background, and I guess I'll explain the whole thing, but you had a stint with National Hot Rod Association, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And how long were you there?
I did work in the NHRA for about a dozen years or so.
Oh, wow. Okay. I did
Yeah.
not realize it was that long. Okay.
Yeah, I started with one particular team, and I was doing I did their sponsor development. We put together a whole sponsor program, and then I ran that program. That led to more sponsorship, public relations, media relations, sponsor development, media coaching, all of those different things. I actually managed a whole division within the NHRA. You can see, there's it back behind me here. I've got a couple Wallies up on the wall there that
Nice.
that we won as a team. So yeah, definitely NHRA is a part of my world.
All right. So I knew about that PR background with Hot Rods.
Right.
And then you and I met through work where we go in and work with clients, a lot of automotive, but a lot of
Yes.
other things too, helping clients with organization development and coaching and facilitation improvement. And now for the last, how many years you've been at Baylor?
This is my fourth year.
And
I've been here since COVID really started. Yeah.
got it. And teaching, writing, public relations writing, journalism
Right.
writing, but a lot of PR there too.
PR and advertising is really this semester. I'm teaching a mass communications course. I'm teaching the principles of advertising and public relations, and I'm also teaching using artificial intelligence in mass communication. So that's
Okay.
kind of the whole world there.
Which is Mike Marshall's pet project is artificial intelligence. So he's going to be jealous that I'm talking about this. But so I really wanted to talk about, the point of all of this is that I want to hear your thoughts about the connection points between public relations and how you go about helping an organization improve, all the organization development work that people like us do, and every organization in the world is out there trying to get better, trying to continuously improve. And there are some learnings from PR. So that's what I want to talk to you about. And I want to just start the conversation with just something that may be so simplistic, but I think a lot of people don't understand it. I remember my mom saying, well, what you do is just a smoke screen. My PR career when I first started, mom just couldn't see it as anything other than spin doctor.
Right.
That was how she saw it. But so how would you, just for our audience, how would you define public relations? What is it?
Wow, yeah, that's a huge question, and I've got books up back here written on those subjects. But for me, it's about maintaining relationships with they call them publics, which are different stakeholders between a company or an entity and those publics, and whether it's media, whether it's a group of investors, whether it's internal. It's all public relations. It's all building relationships, and it's communication. So I don't have I should probably have a specific, this is public relations, but it's so many different things to so many different people.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you brought up the publics, because that was the thing that really sealed the deal for me in college when I said, oh, this is what I want to do, because it's like, I am going to manage communication for people, but it's for the sake of relationships with the publics. That's why it's called public relations. And it could be, like you said, it's internal with employees, it's external with customers and the community that you live in, and the government and the investors. And there's just so many different folks you have to think about how you're going to go to market and communicate with them. So
yes.
Okay. That is a super helpful, I think, softball intro to the whole concept for anybody listening. And what I found, and I'm guessing that since you're still in this world, you feel the same way, but it is a fascinatingly complex thing that you have to do to think about PR strategy and the mindset of PR. So I guess I'd like you to, wax eloquently, just, no pressure, but just make sure this is golden. Could you tell us, how does that intersect with the kind of interventions that you and I might do going into an organization? So, you're managing all these publics and communicating. That's what PR is. And there's a strategy behind that and planning behind that. But how does that show up in the kind of work that people like us do?
Wow. It really, if you take the work like the people like us do, is really helping managers be more successful, right? Or helping people be more successful. If we take managers, let's say, I can give you an example. So I was working with one particular client, and they were going to let a person go. All right. They had to part ways for whatever reason, right? And the GM was like, yeah, we're gonna, go in, have a meeting, say goodbye, and then move on. I said, no. You don't do that. I said, you need a strategy behind this. You need to have a message for vendors. You need to have a message for the employees internally that work in his department, the people who don't work in his department. You need a customer message. So you have to build all of these messages to take care of all of these different stakeholders, these different publics, right? And the GM said to me, I never even thought of that. Because take, for example, the IT, that employee could have gone and taken passwords and done things online, and like, not that they would, but they could have. They were vindictive, right? And so they had to communicate with those people and the vendors to let them know, hey, even if this person no longer is, associated with us, he has no authority, because he'd been multiple years. So where PR comes in is it helps us manage the message. We've got something we need to communicate, and whether it's something like that, or whether it's, hey, you're doing a great job, let's focus on bright spots, right? Which is something that we love to do, right? You're doing a great job, but I need to tell you differently than I need to tell this person. And it's all about managing that message. Now, the way that we get to how we define those different groups, those publics, those stakeholders, is by doing research. And whether it's informal, getting to know your team, buying pizza, sitting down next to them, getting to know about their family, that's research, right? Or whether it's by doing anonymous surveys, or touch point surveys, or whether it's you do a customer survey, and so you're doing research that's going to give you direction in how you need to craft this message, what's important to this particular group. So
Yeah.
all of that falls under this public relations umbrella, right? And so as a success coach, as a management coach, as somebody who's there to really help people be better at what they do, ultimately, it's all about communication. How am I going to communicate this message? So being strategic, doing research, having a plan, and then following up with, did it work? Great. If it did, keep doing it. If it didn't, do it again. I tell managers and people that are communicating, I said, if you think you've communicated enough, double it, and you're about a third of the way there.
Right.
You have to continually communicate, and the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And again, that's part of that plan, creating a plan, having a strategy, having a message.
Yeah.
That's really where PR fits into this.
I think that's so smart. And, I hate to break it to anybody who's in an industry who thinks that they're the one industry that's the relationship business. All the industries that I've worked in over the years, they all eventually tell me it's a relationship business.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's the one-on-one relationship with a customer. Maybe it's the whole entity having a relationship with the community, or having a brand presence where they're trying to be engaging a relationship with their fans, or whatever it is. It's always relationship. And to your point, this is certainly something, that we said when I worked for a PR firm. Roomers love vacuums.
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
if I'm not messaging, if I'm not the one crafting and planning that message of what I want to say with that particular relationship that I have with that person, that entity, that stakeholder group, they'll fill in the details for me.
Yes.
I had I probably have told this story on the podcast, but there was a client of the PR agency, and this happened before I arrived, sadly, so I didn't get to see this all go play out, but it was a hospital. Their customer service scores just suddenly fell in the toilet.
Mhm.
And it was like, why? Like they were doing their research. They were being good boys and girls and trying to find out how their publics were relating to them. And they were relating poorly. And it turns out it all stemmed from an ER doctor who had a patient come in who said, I want you to remove this tattoo of my boyfriend's name that's on my rear end.
Oh.
And and of course the ER is not going to handle that, but the way the ER doctor explained that, he just sort of left it at that. And this woman went through the community talking about how awful they were, and she was an opinion leader of some kind, and it was who knows how badly that blew up, but they had to go do some messaging.
Yeah.
They had to go do some messaging about, here's why, we for the sake of taking care of patients who have emergent needs, we do not handle things like this, and we refer you. They had to come up with a whole messaging plan.
Yeah.
But that just shows it was the vacuum was there. They didn't go message on it, and the rumor filled it in. These guys don't care about us. They just they send you away. All the stuff that people say.
Yes.
So
Yes. Oh, that's funny. But it really emphasizes the point, right? That you've got to have a plan, and if you take it a step further, you have to have that plan in advance. You mentioned NHRA, and NHRA is an inherently dangerous sport, right?
Yeah.
And so I, as the publicist, the PR professional in charge of a team and or in charge of a whole series, I literally had press releases, outlines, templates built in case somebody was killed, in case somebody had a bad accident.
Yep.
And I had all these, because God forbid those things happen, and actually it did a couple of times. And it's just, again, it's a dangerous sport, but you have to be prepared for those things. Right. You're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. Let's practice, And so in that case, hopefully, your agency, as they dealt with them, we know how to handle crisis, boom, 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 boom. This is what we do. We put the information out there. We're transparent. We do all these kinds of things. And, but it's being prepared, and that's where you see a lot of bad press
Yeah.
happens because people are just unprepared. They don't have a strategy, which is where a PR professional could really help them in that situation.
Yeah, and crisis PR, I mean, that's something that literally every organization now has to think about. And I took a class in crisis PR, and this is in the mid 90s, and it happened to be the man who he was actually the founder of the agency that eventually hired me. But he was involved in the Oklahoma City bombing and some things
Wow.
where, he thought long and hard about assassination attempts and such with a lot of our clients and executives and government officials. And I it always struck me that those were things outside the organization that were attacks of some kind. These were crisis moments where we had to react, and so often you see organizations internally shoot themselves in the foot because they haven't planned on basic things.
Yeah.
One of the examples I give when I talk to leadership teams is the DISC profile for personality and communication preferences.
Mhm.
Everybody's got a letter. You're a D, you're an I, an S, or a C, and you need all four of those types of ways of thinking about things sitting at the table when you're making a process change, a
Mhm.
pay plan change, when you're doing some big decision.
Right.
Because you're going to have some people that say, what are we going to do, and some people that say, why would we bother changing, we need to research this, and some people that say, how will we implement it? But somebody better be saying,
Yes.
who is this going to impact?
Yes.
Who are we going to have to get on our side? Who are the people that are opinion leaders here that need to help us roll this out? And if you don't have that, and you think, hey, we've made a logical decision, this is the right thing to do, but you haven't taken the time to plan out a message
Yeah.
for all those audiences, you're just in trouble. You're just
Right.
in trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things I teach my students.
Hmm.
As we go through and I teach the strategies and the principles, right? Um, Obviously, the communication is key, and so we have to teach students to be good writers, right? We
Yep.
have to teach them to and that's being concise, being specific, using a particular style. We promote a Associated Press style, but
Yes.
I've got my AP style book, and I still refer to it. I was trying to find something today,
Yep.
just to be sure. But um, we teach them that, but we also teach them just the strategy of putting together this plan. What's my theme? What's my goal? What's my message?
Hmm.
I have a master's degree in this. This is what I learned at USC, was how to strategically manage this communication. And I've been blessed to be able to use what I learned and actually share that with students, which is a lot of fun.
Well, okay, so you brought up writing, and I would like to talk just specifically about writing for public relations and what that brings to the game. Because I think this is sort of where I envisioned this conversation would go, is that we talk about, hey, you've got to be planning your message, you've got to be thinking about the relationships with all of your different publics. If you're not, they're going to think about it for you, and they're going to think negatively. So come up with a plan, be
Yes.
proactive.
Yes.
The other side of that to me, and this is maybe more tactical,
Mhm.
but I think writing for public relations and to some degree journalism is just different from the kinds of writing that you're experiencing elsewhere. And I say this with a slight bit of professional pride in my PR background, that we were better writers than most of the folks that
Oh,
I know.
absolutely. Well,
So
and Mark, I teach a class. One of the classes I teach, it's actually a course not for journalism majors, but we teach it here at Baylor. It's called Writing for Media Markets, and it's
oh,
required by the business school.
yep.
And what we do is we take this skill that we're talking about, how to write concisely, how to get rid of all the fluff,
Yeah.
be specific in what you're writing. And write it briefly. Okay. So, and I'll get into that in a sec. But then how does that relate to communicating in a business sense? Writing emails, writing reports,
Mm,
writing summaries.
yep.
And the people who have that skill are the ones who succeed
That's
because
exactly
they're
right.
able to get their message across, their ideas across. And I don't care whether you're a master at writing a prompt in ChatGPT, or whether you are a master at creative writing. It still is not journalistic, and it doesn't meet those things. It doesn't have your voice. And that's really, I obviously I'm teaching a class in artificial intelligence this semester, but
Right.
it still cannot take the place of knowing what good looks like. And we have to teach students, whether they're, your students or my students, because they are your students when you're coaching and consulting.
Yeah.
Whether we have to teach our students how to communicate.
Mm.
It's really interesting. One of the first things I do when I teach this class is I say, I just want to get people writing. I want to get the kids writing. So I'll say, write a story about something that happens over the break. If let's say I'm teaching this class this semester, write something that happened over Christmas break. Just write an event, something that happened, and I will literally get 2 pages, no paragraph breaks, one complete, this and then great, thank you. I put that away, and then I totally blow up the way that they were taught to write. The whole 5-sentence, 5-paragraph kind of thing that everybody learned in high school on how to write a thesis paper, right? I say, I'm going to blow up everything you know about writing. And once I blow it up, then I'm going to put the pieces back together. The who, the what, the where, the when, the why, the how. And let's get into what really is important and get rid of the fluff. And make, a paragraph in the kind of writing that we're talking about is 1 sentence, maybe 2. It's not 5 sentences, 6 sentences that are about this long, right?
Exactly.
It's short and sweet. And so I go through the whole semester, and I go through 13, 14 weeks, whatever. And then at the end of the semester, I say, now I want you to go back to that thing you wrote at the very beginning. And I want you to look at it. And I want you to look at what you just turned in and what you wrote at the beginning of the semester. And I want you to see how much you've learned and what a difference in the communication that happens. Because if you can put 2 things that you've written side by side together and say, I wrote that, I'm gonna go with this, and that's where, people don't pick up newspapers really anymore. Very rarely. You might see somebody with a Wall Street Journal or maybe a New York Times, or maybe a USA Today if you're at a particular hotel that has them, right? And I don't even know if they do anymore. I don't think I remember seeing any. But they still have to write that way. And let's, people say, well, everything's video now. You know what? You want to know how to write a good script?
Yep.
It's the same way. Yeah, we have a little bit different syntax and a little, the way that we say it, but it still is good script writing. Good video comes from having a great script, or at least a great outline, which is the strategic part of what we're talking about.
Well, and this is something that I think everybody intuitively knows is right, but they just don't do it when it comes down to actually sitting down to start writing or typing your message. But I remember my English teacher in high school, Mrs. Tyree. Hi, Miss Tyree. She had a sign on the wall that I later found out was by the guy who brought Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You're from Baylor, so this will, you'll appreciate this, but he's the first guy to publish Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Okay.
And he was a poet, Robert Southey, but he said, "It is with words as with sunbeams. The more they are condensed, the deeper they burn." That to me is the essence of what we're trying to do. We don't have very much time to get our employees' attention, to get our customers' attention, what have you. We have this short burst. We better just intensify and burn in that message we have. Well, the best way to burn it in is to be nice and concise, short and sweet, like you said. with your words, active voice with your sentences, one
Absolutely.
subject, one verb, make it a strong verb, all the things that, I'm sure you end up teaching in your class.
Exactly.
But you just have this tiny window. And so
Yeah.
you better make use of that window.
Yeah.
It's just hard to do.
It is. And, I would add something to that, at least to the practice of it, and say, if you want to be a good writer, you have to write every day.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
absolutely, and it all comes to practice. That's why professional athletes practice. They'll practice 10 hours to get one free throw, right?
Right.
They'll do thousands of free throws just so they get in the game and they get that one shot that wins them the national championship, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could say national championship here at Baylor because we've won one of those recently. So, yeah. But but it comes down to practice, right?
Yeah.
And take it outside of, let's take it outside of writing. Let's take it into this whole communication and strategy, right?
Mhm.
If you want to be a good strategic communicator, you have to have a plan, and you have to write those plans, and you have to think through it. It's practice, practice, practice.
All right. So practice. Also study some of the greats. And there are certainly PR campaigns out there. There are companies that are really good at it where you could study their planning and their strategy. What about studying good writing? Do you suggest your students read good?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, what I'm thinking in my head, and I don't know, this is maybe off the cuff and I shouldn't say it, but Raymond Chandler, the guy that wrote The Big Sleep and a bunch of other, absolute hit private eye novels. I mean, he's an American, genius. He's just the golden age of those detective stories.
Sure.
He was I think he was like an investment banker or an oil. I mean, he had a business line of work. And if you read his writing, it's just, I mean, think private eye talk, right? Tells you the facts, but somehow manages to just communicate so much with his language. But that would be an example of, even in fiction, in literature, there are, things you can pick up. So.
Yeah. And that was one of the fun things about doing the coaching and the consulting that we've done, is that you get on an airplane, nobody's bothering you. You grab a book.
Yeah.
You're not listening to music. Yeah, you may need to take a little nap or something, but I read through novels and novels and novels, and writers, and I like the detective shows like Lee Child or John Grisham, Harlan Coben, those kinds of writers, Vince Flynn, were truly, the writing style is what I really enjoyed. But again, like you said, it's very succinct. It's very specific. It uses, if the word is burn, then use the word burn, right?
Yeah.
Don't use smolder, and don't use torch. Use the word burn.
Yeah.
And so but you have to read. And I have my students, another concept. I want my students to be critical consumers of news. And I don't care where your bias is, left, right, up, down, middle, backwards, doesn't matter to me. But you need to get an idea of where news comes from. So we have weekly quizzes on current events. And they have to go out, and I give them a couple of sources, whether it's Wall Street Journal, New York Times, or the Washington Times or Post or whatever, and I say, okay, this week I want you to get headlines every day, and then we're going to have a quiz. But they have to read, the stories and get into those, so they're constantly being immersed in this style of writing. And that gives them this is what good looks like, right? And again, that goes to what we talk about as coaches is, we have to show, if you're a manager, you have to show your team what good looks like. This is what good communication looks like. This is what a good job looks like. This is what I expect.
Yeah.
And without knowing what good looks like, then you don't know whether you're there or not. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you know, some organizations that we talk to are small enough that this isn't a thing for them, but you know, a bigger organization like the Associated Press is going to have a style guide. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
this
absolutely.
is how we write, this is how we abbreviate, this is the kind of language we want to see.
Yes. Yeah.
But
Well,
again, that's being proactive, right?
oh, absolutely. It's how do we communicate our message here in this culture, in this
Yeah.
environment? NHRA has a style guide.
Yep.
When I was writing, Baylor University has a style guide.
Yep.
The Baylor Lariat, which is the newspaper, student newspaper, has a style guide. And Motorola had a style guide when I worked there years and years and years ago.
Oh, I forgot you were at Motorola. Yeah.
Yeah, and the tech group, the plastics injection molding, there was a style guide that in injection molding we had, you know, that it covered what, you know, things in our industry that we would be aware of. You know, when you talk about press tonnage and things like that,
Yeah.
you know, there's different ways to refer to that that someone outside the industry wouldn't get. But if you're talking to that industry, you know, there's your style. So.
Well, and there's another example, right? Like you need to think that through. Internally, we might have a way to talk about it. How do we say these product features to our customers?
Yes.
Because they don't give a hill of beans about all of our private terminology. In fact, they're turned off by it. I mean, we know this in the automotive world, you know, where, you know, there's all sorts of lingo that we've had to jettison so that we don't sound like jerks, frankly.
Yeah.
But so let me ask you, I'm going to switch gears to the final thing that I really wanted to talk to you about, which is, you know, the student work you've been doing is kind of a new thing. And while you've been doing that student work, we've sort of been switching over into Gen Z and beyond. And now we've got this new thing called these you know, language model artificial intelligence systems.
Right.
And so I guess I just kind of want to get your take. You know, you're right there at the front lines. These people are going to be hitting the job market.
Yes.
And everybody is desperate to find good workers.
Yes.
I was literally just talking to, I can't say anything that will identify it, but a very prestigious government agency. I was talking to somebody in management there, and he said he's a few years from retirement. They can't find a replacement for him. They can't find people who are willing to work, quote unquote. And he had he went through about 7 different individuals where like that they just none of them have worked out. They've all sort of flamed out.
Yeah.
And so I know that that's in the, you know, in the water, that's in the ecosystem that a lot of our listeners are dealing with, and artificial intelligence is too. So like, what words of wisdom could you give us for, you know, what's coming with the generation and what's coming with artificial intelligence?
Okay. So if what's coming with the generation, I think COVID really messed with us for a couple of years. And I think it put us back. I think we're just now coming out of, and it's been, you know, since 2020. So we're 4 years out really since all that really took over. But students missed 2 years of their education.
Yeah.
We're valuable. And whether you're talking about elementary school or middle school or high school or college, there was a couple years that were just ripped from their lives that the rest of us had, and we didn't lose, right? So I would say that students today, they may be a little bit not quite to where you think they should be, because they missed
They didn't get it.
Yeah, they just didn't get it. Someone took an eraser and went, you know, and it just made it go away. But that said, I'm really fortunate and blessed to be working with some very bright students. They're, you know, people say, well, they don't want to work, they don't want to go to class. No, it's the same as us. They want to make a difference. All right, which you and I wanted to when we graduated. I mean, I remember having that conversation with them. I just want to make a difference. You know, I was 2 months into my job. I'm not making a big enough difference. Matthew, you just started. Give me a break. You know, you got to learn, right? but they're motivated the same way we are. They want to make a difference,
Yeah.
and they're willing to work, but they need to be communicated with.
Yeah.
And you
Circling
can't
all the way back around to the whole point of this conversation.
really. They want to. They who was it? Was it Nick Saban? It may have been Nick Saban. Don't correct, don't kill me if I get this wrong, but he's been coaching for so long, right? And someone asked him to compare players from 25 years ago to players today. He said, well, the players do the same thing. Players back then, you just told them what to do. Today, you have to not only just tell them what to do, but you have to tell them why and how it's going to affect them and everybody else.
Yeah.
So I think there's more information that's needed. As managers of this generation, we need to make sure that we communicate, and we can't get frustrated with them, because what'll happen, they'll shut you off. They'll get to that I'm out place.
Yep.
And when you get them there, then we've lost them.
Yeah.
But I think that employers, when they get the good ones, they will be ecstatic, because these kids are brilliant. They have the benefit of the technology that you and I didn't grow up with. I mean, the internet was something that came when, we were just starting our careers, whereas they don't know life without it. They don't know life without their cell phones, right?
Yeah.
You and I got a cell phone in 2006 or 2007. It's like, hey, this is a cool toy, does it still make phone calls? And now it's so powerful. So I think these students are brilliant. This generation is absolutely brilliant. And I think they're motivated and they want to make a difference. People have called them lazy. I don't
You don't
think,
buy it.
I don't buy that they're lazy. I just think we need to communicate differently with them. And if we can do that, then you'll bypass what's considered lazy. Now, artificial intelligence. That's the first part. The second part, artificial intelligence is it's like this thing that we got in 2006, right? It's like the computer that you're staring at right now, that I'm staring at right now. It's like the calculator that my dad got in 1974, right? That really changed his world. Computers, heck, I got a typewriter back here that was my grandfather's. It's one of those old typewriters.
Nice.
You can't see it, but up over here in the corner, I've got a Macintosh Classic, which is what in 1985, 1986, that's what I used.
Yeah.
It was cutting edge. That was a $4,000 machine right there.
I remember the day when it came into our household. It changed everything.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And that's what AI is. Believe it or not, we've been using AI for a long time already. Anytime you would talk to Siri, that's artificial intelligence, or Alexa, that's artificial intelligence. Anytime you would call up your bank and it would voice activate, that's artificial intelligence. So we've been using this stuff for a long time. We just didn't have a name for it. Or we didn't call it AI. We called it, ugly tellers, whatever, those kinds of things. But AI it's not going to necessarily replace people in jobs, but a person in a job might get replaced by someone who knows how to use AI. I spent some time over the Christmas break talking with some of my automotive clients, and I was shocked. I said, well, how are you using AI? Not really. We're not really using it. And I'm like, what do you mean? Think about this for a second, and we'll talk automotive just a second. Okay. So in the automotive world, can you imagine if, let's say I'm talking with somebody on the phone, and I'm having a conversation, there's voice to computer understanding. So it's understanding what I'm saying, And if up on my screen, as I'm looking at another screen here, up on my screen, it pops up as I'm talking, ask about this, ask about this. He might need to know this. He might want to know about this. Here's the sources for this. And building that as far as a model of communication, planning it out, giving me the resources like that, so that I could have the, let's say someone's shopping for a Maverick, right? And hey, tell me about the Maverick. Well, the Maverick does this, this, and this, and up on the screen it pops up and says, tell them about the cost savings and how it compares to whatever. Well, let me tell you about and so it can guide people through. Can you imagine having that product on your computer? Or if you had it in, let's say, a parts department, someone calls up again and says, hey, I'm looking for a headlight for my 1974 F100, right? And it pops up, and not just that, but ask him about the whole thing and whether or not his backlights work, and and how we could. Can you imagine the upsells or the additional sales that could be created just by using an AI powered bot, which is chat bots, using these bots. And it shocks me that the companies, the dealerships, are not engaging that, because it's out there, it's available, and if anyone wants to discuss that more, hey, call me. I'll walk through it. I'll work through it with you, and help people understand and help people apply AI as it exists right now, without even having to go buy something and build that stuff, but just using the basics in writing a customer email,
right?
And they're not using it. They're not doing it. They're not there. You can plug in your information from a CRM, and you don't have to give specifics, but here's where all this data comes from. Here's what they bought. Here's so give me a predictive analysis of, what this person is going to want next, based on, they've got 4 kids, they've got this, they've got that, their kids are these ages. Well, their kid's going to need a car, and they're probably going to, so you may have, can you imagine how much more effective you could be as a salesperson or as a manager, saying, hey, you can call the Smiths because they're ready for, we just got on the lot a new Jeep that we can sell it to them for $6,000. We're going to make a couple grand on it, and they're going to get into a vehicle for their kids, going to be safe, and it's certified, blah, 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 whatever, right? And those tools are available. And we can customize those, and we can build them in such a way without a whole lot of extra work to make people more effective. And those tools are there. You don't have to take all these classes and all this kind of other stuff, people trying to make a buck on all this. You don't have to do that. But I think that AI helps make repetitive things that you have to do repeatedly. It makes them easier by taking over some of those tasks. And
analyzing, helping you set some things up, but you still have your hands on the steering wheel, and you're still controlling the situation, the communication.
And this goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning, where I said, you got to know what good looks like, right?
Yeah.
You have to know what this relationship looks like. You have to know how this all feeds together, and it can give you suggestions, but it might suggest that you call them about this, this, and this, but that person, and that's not what they need. And so you disregard that, and you make the message this way, and you move on from there, or vice versa. So,
I won't go into a huge amount of detail, but we did a podcast episode sometime last year where I just thought, let's see what happens. I teach a high school Sunday school class. So I said, this is what an inductive Bible study is. Give me an inductive Bible study set of questions for Philippians chapter 4. I think it was what it was. And I mean, it was pretty good, it sort of nailed it. But here's the flip side is, that had to be tweaked first off. So I didn't take my hands off the steering wheel. It wouldn't have been, good right out of the box.
Right.
And also the idea was to see if it could shake loose some things that I hadn't thought about so that I could go facilitate a discussion.
Yes.
It wasn't spiritual development for me, right? Like I wasn't going to go to AI and say, disciple me, make me a better Christian. Instead, I'm saying, give me some questions that I can ask so I can wrestle with this particular Bible passage.
Yes.
That's a whole different ball game.
Absolutely.
But I love the way you put that it's going to replace some tasks if you know how to use it, so you're better at your job.
Exactly. And like I said, for your listeners, if they want to know more about that, or if they want to explore that, I would be more than happy to work with them on that.
Perfect. And are you still doing, I guess I should have asked you this point blank before we started, but are you still doing like organizational coaching for companies that are looking for help? Okay.
Sure. Absolutely.
So PR, organization improvement, AI, how can folks get a hold of you, Matthew?
So I'll give you my cell phone number, which I don't mind giving my cell phone number out. And I'll tell you flat out, if I don't know the number, it's going to go to voicemail. But leave a message, right? And if you leave a message, then I can call you back. But my cell phone 602, which is a Phoenix area code, 602-882-4290. You can text me, you can call me. My email address is mwb@matthewbrammer.com. 2 T's, 2 M's, MATTHEWBRAMMER.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I hope folks do reach out, and it's so fascinating to me that we had a conversation about public relations, and then we started talking about the next generation of workers, and it ended up being a conversation about public relations. That you've got to message with those people and say, well, not just what we're doing, but here's how and why.
Yes.
And AI is going to help us do that. So the whole thing to me holds together, and I'm glad you have a career in what you're doing. It's fascinating to me.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun, and I'm very blessed.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, our mutual friend, Mr. John Wolf, closes us out every episode. So you're going to not hear it right now, but right now in the background is some ukulele music playing, and John is going to take over. So, Matthew, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks.
Likewise. Thank you. God bless you, man. Thank you.
And there you have it, another session of contemporaneous extemporizing from Mark and Mike. I know it's redundant, but consider who we're talking about. As always, feel free to share the ideas you heard here. No right to reserve, no permissions needed. Thanks. See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.